spent my vacation writing this person's offer letter 7 months ago. What do you mean you're telling me now I'm going to have to spend my other vacation talking to you about how to let them go suddenly? That's not right.
What would happen if we just told the truth?
Welcome to Truth Works, where we dig into the nitty-gritty of leadership and work.
And what needs to change? I'm Jessica Neal.
And I'm Patty McCord.
Our journey together started in HR, but trust us, it's evolved into something wild, honest, and well, a bit rebellious.
So throw out the handbook. We're here to redefine rules to work for us, not against us.
Let's dive into another episode. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Truth Works. I am Jessica Neal, your host, and I am here today with a lovely lady that I'm so excited to have on the show. Her name is Ashley Hurd. She is the founder and CEO of the Manager Method, and I want her to tell her story, but she has, I don't know, you and I might be just kind of soulmates in a sense, because we are out on a mission to tell truths about work. And so even though my podcast is called Truth Works and yours is called HR Besties, I feel like we're going to be besties after this because we like to talk about the same things. So welcome to the show, Ashley. Can you please tell our listeners your story and how you got into all this? Because it's fascinating and I know they want to know about it.
Thank you, Jessica. And I'm absolutely happy to be life besties with you on this journey of talking about work and then what can we do to make work better. So I'm Ashley Hurd. I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. I live in Atlanta.
No, wait, I grew up in Shelbyville.
No, really?
Yeah.
No way. Wait.
Shut the front door.
Wow. I went to college in Danville, Kentucky.
I guess I saw that on your profile, but I didn't know you grew up right next door to me.
The Commonwealth. I believe wholeheartedly that growing up in Louisville or the surrounding areas, I'll count Shelbyville. And the Shelbyville Horse Show is very fun, by the way.
Shoot, you've been to the Shelbyville Horse Show. Oh my God. Okay.
Of course. But I do think being from Kentucky, being from these areas, there is a unique thing, and I should have a better word than thing, but you appreciate things. Like there is a connection that you find when you meet people from Kentucky, or like I live in Atlanta now, and I say like Atlanta will have like, oh my gosh, like 7 crazy events in one weekend and nobody really knows the difference. You're in the Louisville area and it is like things on every pole, and people they care and they get excited for things. And that's something that I brought literally into the workplace of like wanting things to be fun, wanting to have fun even in like tough moments. And so I'd cite being from Kentucky as a huge part of it. Well, yeah,
and you say Louisville correctly.
Of course I do, because it's a code word as well. What if I tried to claim us from Louisville? You'd be like, that's witness protection, protection background there.
I went to college in New York and people would ask me where I was from. And I always said Louisville because pretty much I was, because anything we wanted to do in Shelbyville, we had to go to Louisville to do it. They wouldn't know Shelbyville other than The Simpsons, right? Because it was like a town on The Simpsons. And so I would say Louisville. And they'd be like, where? And then I'd have to go, Louisville, right? And then they're like, oh, Louisville, Kentucky. And I'm like, that's not how you say it.
It's not how you say it. Or they'd be like, oh, do you go to Derby? I'd be like, no, we're from that area. We go to the Oaks. Or now you go to Thurby or the other retreating days. So anyway.
The Oaks. So fun. Okay, well, we're not here to talk about Kentucky all day, although I could.
Yeah, same.
And funny thing, my girlfriends want to take a little girl trip, but it's like Derby weekend. I'm like, I can't.
No, you can't. You absolutely cannot. No, we have even Atlanta. We have a Derby party every year. It is an event.
Yeah, I know. So anyways, okay. Back to you. So you and I grow up in the same place. Maybe we even know same people.
Yeah,
we'll get to that.
I'm sure we do. Yes.
We don't want all the listeners to hear all of that, but we'll get to that at some point. So you grew up in Kentucky, you go to college in Kentucky. Then what happens?
I moved to DC, and so I worked for a best practices research firm. It was corporate executive board, now Gartner. I started cold calling Fortune 1000 CFOs. So I quickly thickened my skin from my liberal arts background. I got promoted into the role that then I'd go, other people would make cold call appointments. I would show up on those appointments to meet with heads of HR across North America for the head of HR program.
Wild.
Wild. And so I always wanted to go to law school. I literally had there were no lawyers in my family, although since my mom went to law school later in life, and my brother, who's a couple years older than me, is getting ready to graduate from law school part-time. But I didn't have any, but I just decided at the Kentucky State Fair at 10 years old, I made this sheriff's badge. At the time, Ashley Vinsel, corporate lawyer, which, I was, I clued to be a dork as a kid, but I had this in my mind. And so I was going to go to law school, and these heads of HR kept saying, go into employment law. You'll never be at a loss for work. And
that's true.
It was true because people have been peopling for decades, and they're not stopping anytime soon.
No, they're not.
But basically I was a lawyer. I did employment law. I worked in law firms. I did mostly management side employment work. I worked for a large firm. And then eventually went in-house and worked directly for a client. And so what that meant was going from being this lawyer in court to dealing with the very legal issues, including who's getting kicked out of the company parking lot. A lawyer should have, that's an important decision. We should have a lawyer make that, those types of questions. But so one thing I saw is I worked at some different places. I was in Atlanta, but to be close to family, we moved back to Louisville. I worked at KFC, brands, and we moved to Australia as a family for my husband's job. And so I rejoined a prior company, worked remotely, and then came back and was working for McKinsey consulting firm on their global legal team. And I was in that role, and after a year had been asked to interview and gotten the role as head of HR for North America at McKinsey. And I'd started in the role and was leading a team and talking to someone.
Which is huge.
And especially I don't those that know McKinsey or have worked there. There is no place of imposter syndrome. When you look on the intranet and you'll be somebody you're about to get on a call with, I'd look them up and I'd say, oh my gosh, they have 5 Ivy League degrees. I'm still don't have any.
Me neither.
So I was, oh my gosh. And so you can be filled with that. But the reassuring thing that you see is what I saw. And I was telling someone on my team this, I'm like, there are senior partners at McKinsey that they could have a masterclass taught to them by an assistant restaurant manager at KFC about driving business, but also the impact on people's lives. And, neither would think that they have much in common with each other, but they really do. And I had when we lived in Australia, I bought this domain, managermethod.com, did nothing with it, many of us do with random domains. But I talked to this person. She's like, why? I'm like, I want to have a company that I help people across industry have difficult conversations. Managers, difficult can mean lots of things. And this person said, why wouldn't you do that? I mean, I had answers. I just gotten this job I never thought I would get. But it really stuck with me. And so I decided to leave McKinsey, start my company. I was able to also rejoin a prior company who was fine with me starting my business. That was not going to happen realistically at McKinsey. But
yeah, right. Yeah.
But so I was able to start, and that was 6 years ago. So through it, I started this business. It looks wholly different than when I first started, but everything at the principle, helping managers across industry have difficult conversations. But I started posting on social media, making role play videos on TikTok. Again, those things you don't think you'll start doing in your 40s. And met 2 other people from social media, Lee and Jamie, and we started the HR Besties podcast. And so it all blends, because when I grew up, I actually went to Manual High School, because this is what you have to talk about when you're from Kentucky.
Yeah. Well, I went to KCD.
Okay.
And then I ended up graduating from Shelby County. But
okay. So we definitely probably know some of the same people.
Yeah,
but I did a program at Manual. It's the Youth Performing Arts School for playwriting. And I always wanted to be a playwright. But I went on to law school. You didn't hear me mention playwriting through my career quilt. But everything I wanted to be when I was growing up with this idea of a playwright, I do it in 59-second videos on social media, but blending my experience. And so it still is the same premise of helping work be better and using all the experiences, good and bad, I had as a lawyer and in HR. But it's been a way that's been really fun for me to create something with my unique perspective.
Yeah. Can I just say, look at us 2 badass Kentucky women.
I love it.
Becoming heads of HR for huge companies. Did you ever imagine?
No, but that was part of the reason why. I mean, I literally was in the role at McKinsey. I'd started it when I resigned. Part of what I said, I was like, I don't like the person I am here. I said, I really want to try something different. I've always had this urge to start this business. And one of the responses was, but we just put your face on this map, this presentation around the firm, which again, like McKinsey, the love language is definitely PowerPoint. But for me, it was the thing I kept thinking about was nobody's going to believe it when I post this on LinkedIn. It's going to be crazy. I mean, already I was working there, but when I get this leadership role, people are going to be, absolutely lose their mind. And then I stopped myself and thought, but that's not a reason. That's not a reason to do something. Because, right. And so, for me, I'm sure there are people that probably thought it was absolutely nuts. So I know there were that.
Well, sure. Yeah. I mean, like to leave that to go do your own thing, like that's a little crazy.
But it's when you put that, I say the LinkedIn test aside and do what's really uniquely drives you and you feel like you have the skill at, it's become such a fulfilling life, and other adjectives, but very fulfilling.
Well, congratulations.
And you.
Super proud of you. Also, for the listeners that can't see us, we are twinning in red.
Yeah.
So, not only are we probably sisters from another mother that grew up in Kentucky, we also like the color red, and we're twinning. So yes. I feel like now we definitely are besties for life. Totally. It has to be. So let's get into this company that you start, and you want to help people, and, you want to give them advice. How did you start it? What did you start talking about? Obviously started making social posts and things like that, but what was the mission for the company?
The big mission for the company is to help people have conversations that are often not had. And generally that was, as a lawyer, sometimes I saw people definitely doing and saying the wrong things, but more often I saw people not doing or saying something, especially things around performance, like the manager that comes to HR and says, we need to let this person go. And you've never heard anything. Okay, let me look at the performance review. Oh my gosh, fives out of fives. Tell me more.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I didn't mean it, but okay, well.
Right. This is why people they hear me on the show talk about it all the time. Performance reviews are not an indicator of performance ever. They don't work. And the first question I would ask managers when they would come to me and say, I want to let somebody go, I'm like, what are they going to say when we come to them?
Yeah.
Are they going to be surprised? And they'd be like, yeah, okay.
Same. Or they shouldn't be. Okay. Well, from your perspective. And so a lot of this is, conversations I'd had all around where we're helping people think about it from the other person's perspective and the end game. This person, I'm like, I've spent my vacation writing this person's offer letter 7 months ago. What do you mean you're telling me now I'm going to have to spend my other vacation talking to you about how to let them go suddenly? That's not right. And
also, why is it always on vacation?
It's always on vacation.
Always.
I mean, Jessica, I'm sure you have you can visualize yourself on these vacations on your laptop, on your phone. Everyone's sweating you because they're like, I thought you were on vacation. You're like, we need a performance plan.
Right. So right now.
Right now, always. Okay. I thought about all these conversations. And again, I kept having the same conversation across industry. And so I first started with employment document templates, very exciting things, but which is needed.
But helpful.
But really what I liked better is thinking about the conversations that I'd had with managers that people like, oh, I never thought about it that way. Like, what do I do and say? And so I created this course, Manager 101. And I created this as an idea of really kind of being a substitute of the conversations I'd have with people. But a lot of people don't have that as a resource. You can't just pick up the phone and call someone. So I created this whole course on things managers need to know. And so originally I was like, oh, I'm going to sell this to individual managers. Well, the shocking turn of events, again, some people did buy it and some people support it, but the people that really need that aren't generally looking for it on the internet to purchase unless they're being required to by their organization as a condition of staying employed. And so quickly I had HR contacts that reached out and said, hey, could we get this for a group of our managers? Again, if I'd thought about it, I've been like, oh, that's a really good idea. So we really now, individuals can buy what we have, but a lot of it is working with organizations. And so, and over time, we have this course. So it's like a course and a resource guide. But then the head of HR said, do you have a discussion group, something we could do? And so now what we have is a three-legged stool. So organizations get it, and there's videos and a resource guide. So each manager has it. It's self-paced. But then for HR, the third leg is everything from communications to a schedule to materials to run live cohort sessions with your managers. Because the other thing I saw happening was organizations would be like, we need to bring someone in but you have a lot of baked in expertise generally by your HR teams, L&D. What they often lack is time, maybe some knowledge, but really time. And so this is to help. They've heard best practices from me or practical practices through the course, but then they come together and it's their HR teams talking about, okay, this is how you bring it to life. And it's a kind of a role play, or it's a role play of, in this scenario, what do you do? And so we created that, and now we have a whole leadership platform with tools that go along with it. And so it's really to help to drive people at work.
Yeah. So interesting and so needed, because these organizations don't do that. I mean, even when I was CHRO at Netflix, like, I would make my team role play all the time. And I did it with the entire legal support that supported us, to my HR business partners, to the recruiters, and it was like, let's get into the situations, because those are the things that we're navigating every day. And I don't want you to be learning on the spot how to like navigate some of these complex issues. And some of them are more complex than others, as you know, but when done badly, creates a lot more work for the whole company.
Completely. It is. It's really a lot of what I try to do is to fill in the gap between when a manager's alone, like before they're going to reach out to HR, sometimes legal, but have this idea of what to do and say in the moment. Because I led trainings, especially as a lawyer, that, I mean, people walked away with the definition of the Family and Medical Leave Act, which is all fine and good. But if a manager is really in a position they need to know those specifics, we're probably far down the path. Generally, what people leaders need to know, especially first line people leaders, but even through senior executives, is, okay, if someone tells you they need to take leave and it's a really busy time at work, it matters a lot how you respond to that person. And not, you're not going to solve that alone, but how you respond in those moments. And so a lot of them are talking about the importance of that, and that the approach that they just haven't thought about before. They don't know what to do. Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know, there's all these programs and things out there that are super high level. And I find that what people need is like practical advice that navigates the day to day. Like, they don't need this like high level concept, right? That like happens hardly ever. They need like advice, and companies. And I think, I talk about this all the time on the show, and I think I've heard you talk about it on your show as well. But companies do nothing to prepare managers to manage and lead. They have no resources, no tools to navigate when somebody needs to go on a leave, or if they have to fire somebody, or if somebody asks them for a raise, or anything. Yeah.
It's, I mean, what we've done, and we have a team of 5, including my husband, who left his role leading customer success for a large tech company earlier this year to join, to really lead everything, client from the sales to like our client process.
I love that.
Which is great. But he's like getting on the phone with like a head of HR. I'm like, be nice. I'm super friendly with this person. And he's laughing. He's like, I'm always nice, but there's no way I can show up the same way that you do. But he's really helped to take the company in an even bigger direction with as far as product and all that, and really being strategic and provide those levels of support that you want to make sure it's successful. But it's so true. And so what I've loved is everything, again, is built to be really scalable, so that a lot of our organizations we work with, they have the program, we have access, we get them everything they need, their managers, then they have the toolkit, train the trainer videos to know how to run it. Sometimes I run those cohort sessions. Again, I generally say it's best to have those done internally, but it's been helpful for me to lead some of them, so I can always, we've adapted it over the last few years. But there was a CEO of a very large company that just got acquired by a larger company, and he was joining all these calls, and he was talking about sharing some of these tips, like, oh, I learned this tip, and he's like, this is how I've brought it into work. And it totally changes the dynamic, because all of a sudden, when you get that buy-in from all levels of leadership that like practical tips are helpful, I mean, I completely agree. I think so many people, as a first line leader, they talk in corporate speak because they don't know what to do or say. And so when you have those practical tips, I think it can allow you to become much more relaxed and effective as a leader.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about what you find in your work, because we are all about telling the truth here on this podcast. Also, I just want you to know that I started out my career cold calling too, because I was a headhunter, and we used to, but it makes your skin really thick. But talk to me about what you find in some of the like just biggest issues at work, like outside of this manager not being trained to be a manager, but what do you think is plaguing us right now?
I definitely think a lack of human, I'd say, connection and consideration. Connection that I think whether you're remote or whether you're in person and hybrid, all those different environments, people now with technology, you just communicate with technology, and you send things by email, and then you send something by email. It sounds a lot different, then people make all these assumptions into it and start ratcheting things up, and you write someone off like, okay, this person is my work enemy, when you're all on the same team. And so I just think not having as much actual communication really leads to so many issues. But there's issues of managers not being silent. So whether it's not having performance conversations because you don't know how to have it, it feels really mean. And so then when you get down the path, you're like, this person needs to go. And so you go from 0 to 60. I think there's so much 0 to 60 that happens. Or you have things like people have life moments that happen and people don't know what to do or say, or if there's news in the world, I really have no idea what to say. But sometimes just showing basic levels of care and like, I'm here for you. I care about you personally and professionally. And just having some of those sentences can make all the difference. Because I think a lot of us feel like you come to work, nobody's going to care about you. You're just a spreadsheet. You have all these things. You just got to stuff them inside. And while work is work, the human aspect is so absolutely important and lacking.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I talk about this all the time too, because I think the biggest issues in the workplace today are centered around communication and clarity. Like, people aren't good at communicating and they're not good at being clear. And, it's everything from what you're talking about to showing care for life events. Like, I'm thinking about all the things that happened this weekend, right? And, in Australia and at Brown, and by the way, everyone, I've terrible, and we are thinking of anybody that was impacted and everybody that was not impacted as well, because it's just all heavy. But I was thinking back to like our training at Netflix about maternity leave, and we had to put in the training, and this is like not training, it's sort of more documentation, things that like leaders could like read. And it was like, first just say congratulations. Because they wouldn't. They would be like, well, how long? That would be their first question. Or they'd be like, are you really? Are you sure? Are you
sure? What do we have to do? I mean, the have to, yeah, totally.
Right. What do we have to do? And so, but showing, a little care and having clarity is good. But I mean, but you realize that, in managers and leaders aren't equipped with that. And if you go down layers in an organization, and I think actually McKinsey has some stats on this, I don't remember the exact stats, but if you go down, I think below the vice president level, each level that you get further down, there's less clarity on goals, values, KPIs, like whatever you want to, they don't have the context. And it's a lot of work to get people the information and to be clear and to communicate. But if you can, as a company, it solves a lot of problems.
It does. I mean, I totally agree. It's like this game of telephone. Mm-hmm. And frequently, especially in large organizations, they'll say, well, I can't set goals for my team because I haven't gotten them from my boss's boss's boss. And while that's true, every organization, even if you're going to, emphasize certain priorities, everybody should generally know what's expected of them. And it's really important for managers to know how to cascade that, including for managers of managers. Okay, what do you do when you have certain goals given to you? You have certain goals too, because this execution of goals, or as a lot of people would say, like, how do we get work done? It's totally lacking. I mean, I have talked to people all the time that have that experience. And so a lot of what we try to do is to have those conversations. I mean, the biggest gaps I see are a manager who, we need to let this person go, have these conversations. And all of a sudden you have a legal complaint that comes in. They're like, well, the person just requested to take medical leave. And you say, oh my gosh. And so managers not realizing, again, that doesn't mean you can't do anything. Like, it's still important to have a conversation, but you can't do things in a vacuum, and knowing when you flag things in, because people feel very alone at work, or you're bothering people if you ask a question. But so proactively talking about, like, oh, these are things to know. I mean, to your point, when I posted videos on social media, I started like January of 2022. And
it was an interesting time for people.
Interesting time.
Yeah.
And it was, and it's, but so in July of 22, I had a video go viral and ended up gaining a ton of followers within the next few weeks. And the video was about pumping at work. And it was literally a 59-second role play of talking to
which is the worst, by the way.
It's the worst. And so it was talking about the things that happen of like, what space do we have to give them? Like jokes, it's gross. So all the, like these, and then the flip of that, like, okay, it's also really hard. And so I had just made this video and I didn't have anything like it of like the reaction to it. And so it was also very validating to me of like, experiences I'd had personally, but also had seen professionally. They're so common. And so while I have a business, also I looked at my social media as educational. Like I far more than I talk about, like, here's my business, come hire me. I do topics of like, this is what to do and say, because I also know there's so many managers out there that they're not going to have a development budget. I encourage organizations to, but I'll say the most memorable moment of my professional career, hands down. I was back in Louisville. I mean, this is like a bingo, a few years ago. And my son was really sick. So we had to spend like the whole day in like the urgent care equivalent. And finally we were leaving. He's like, I'm really hungry. Can we go by the McDonald's? I'm like, sure. So we stop and we're in the drive-thru and we pull around and open to pay, and the window opens and someone looks at me and she's like, I know you. And I was like, oh, did we go to high school together? Because it's like the one right near my parents' house. And then I realized, oh my gosh, she's like 10 years younger than me, if not more. She's like, you're the HR lady from TikTok. I was like, oh my gosh. And I was so excited. And so we laughed, like even my like sick son was like smiling. And my husband's like, wow, he's like, you're really giving like management tips all over. And I love that, because I'm like, you never know what's going to cross people's feed. But again, that a restaurant manager at McDonald's, Renee, you have so much more in common with those senior partners at the world's largest consulting firm than people realize.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, well, let's talk about that for a second, because I think that is a big misconception, but we're all navigating the same things.
Yeah, we are. Not wanting to hurt people's feelings, wanting to feel like we matter, wanting to be appreciated when things go well, being afraid of losing our job and our identity and our livelihood, or being embarrassed. All of those very human emotions. So then you take those into leadership and you see those play out in really, really common ways.
Okay, what's a moment, I guess, for folks in your career when you think about one of these like critical moments, right? Maybe it was leaving McKinsey, or like what kind of set you, on this mission? Was there something that happened to you, like that you were like, okay, I need to do this mission. I need to help people work better. Like what happened?
I'd say in part, when I first went in-house, like I went from working in law firms to being an in-house lawyer. I worked for a large public company. At the time, 7,000 employees. We only had 3 lawyers, but I worked 8 to 5. And we had great, at the holidays, we'd have people send us presents. There wasn't really a strategic HR function, so we fulfilled that as well. But it was like lightning in a bottle. We had so much fun. We literally won an award, and the article called us a merry band of lawyers. Had this experience again where I had worked. We did really what I consider to be really good work. We also had a lot of fun at work. Sometimes we did very serious work, but I also lived a really full life outside of work. And so part of it was personal and it was selfish, that I found myself working in a global environment that all I did was work. All I thought about was work. I was not sleeping. I wasn't doing any of that. So part of that was, I really need to make a change. And that was for it personally. And so the second was thinking, again, like we moved to Sydney, Australia. I had to leave my job at Yum for that. But I just was so amazed. They had an amazing recognition culture. And it was a culture where we were the restaurant support center. And so because everything that's the corporate, it was really to support what was happening in the restaurants. And I just saw that role elevated and a real respect within the organization for what that role looks like. And so it was just I think some of it was the realization, like I had worked around consultants and things like that. But when I was actually working frequently with senior partners, I was just amazed at, one, how plenty of them who were super intelligent were also talked like really, really human and had that same perspective. But just in my mind, I frequently thought, it is wild how much these have in common, these two experiences. So it was kind of like the personal aspect of really wanting to make a change and think about what I wanted my life to look like, and as work as part of that. but then think to want to shout from the rooftops. There were not that many people that had, like, I started out and worked at Subway and Kmart, and myself, like in restaurant and retail, and then having supported people in those functions. Not a lot of people have those experiences and can talk about how much they really have in common.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's talk about, because you kind of hinted at it, but let's talk about, I think you talk about this on your show and likely in your TikToks, but let's talk about this aspect of burnout, right? Because it's something that comes up all the time, and you hear everybody talking about everybody's burnt out, and burnout's the biggest issue. I don't know. This might be controversial. People might not like that I'm saying this. I don't know if I believe in burnout. Okay? Because when I have worked the hardest, I was energized, right? And when I think back on like the hard things that I worked on, and most of this was at Netflix, right? And because I spent a lot of time in my life there, but you know, it was hard. We were working day and night and long hours, and it was exhausting, but it was fun. Like, it was so fun. And I was doing it with people that I loved doing it. And of course, I think I was tired, but I wasn't like waking up like, oh my God, I can't believe I have to like get up and go to work. Like, I wanted to get up and go to work. And I didn't mind taking that call at 9:00 at night because I liked doing what I was doing. So I don't know. I feel like burnout is overly used, but what are your thoughts on this burnout culture thing?
I do think burnout can be real, but I do agree it can be overused. I think that all types of work, I think, can be like a toaster. And I think a lot of people automatically go from that 0 to 60 to like, I am burnt to a crisp, where I think there's a lot of times, and in your career, I think there's going to be times when you're going to be lightly toasted. There's going to be times that you're heavier toasted, but some of this is finding the balance in between, because some of those can be sprints. Like, there's been times when I've worked on something and I think a huge part of that is working around people you enjoy. I think if you look at some of those things and people are working around people they definitely don't enjoy, they don't trust whatsoever, and so they're literally doing the work just for the sake of it, and it feels like a slog, that can be hard. So it shows the value of having those real human connections at work, having the purpose behind it. Because also, if you're going to be working your ass off and then you're not going to get any sort of compensation, like thank you or recognition, then people just go into it begrudgingly, and so that's just going to get worse the more you work at it. And so I think a lot of it can also depend on the people. I mean, when I had worked in law firms, I mean, I would get charged about things and working, and just kind of came into that as a habit. But when I actually had this 8 to 5 schedule and I saw that was possible, it really changed my life. Because when I but when I went back to that, working in a global role, I did find work take over, and I noticed things that like I never would have noticed before. Like, I'd either cancel plans with friends because I could, things would come up, or I'd have plans and I would be writing things down, topics to talk about, because I'm like, I don't want to talk about work. People ask about work and I'd be like, how can I non-aggressively be like, I want to talk about something else? And so, but I do think it's this idea of, especially as a leader, thinking about like, you want to driving results without driving people out the door. So how can you make it sustainable, and what matters to the people on your team? And how can you also talk about, I think it's really important in a book upcoming, I'll say that, The Manager Method, coming in February.
Yes. New book alert.
But one of the things that's helpful is in an interview, for example, like, how do you talk about the realities of it? I mean, frequently it's this aspect of like the tough, long hours. Nobody talks about that to candidates because you're like, we don't want to scare them off. But then someone starts and it's not a good surprise. And so I really think being realistic about what roles are look like is one of the things that not just HR teams, but managers can do as well to make sure that it's the right fit sustainably.
Yeah. Well, again, I mean, this is going back to being clear. Right? Like, I'm in venture capital now, and I do a bunch of advising and consulting on the side as well. But one of the things I tell them to do is, like, these founders, I'm like, just be clear on who you are and who you aren't. And tell everybody about it. Before they come, remind them when they come, right? Because that's going to solve so many problems. And again, And then you actually have to be that, right? You have to be who you say you're going to be.
Important.
Because again, like you can do all of this like upfront kind of like our culture and our values. But the moment that somebody walks in the door, they're waiting and they're watching for the hypocrisy, right? And that's when that burnout and that resentment and all of those things happen. And no one wants to feel, to your example, in a job interview, right? And you get the job and nobody wants to feel baited and switched because like you were sold this one thing, but then it's actually this other terrible thing that you didn't sign up for. And there's nothing you can do about it because now you're in the job. And
right now you're stuck. Oh, shit. Yeah. I changed my LinkedIn. What do I do? No.
Right. What do I do? Yeah. So it's, clear.
It is. It really is about being clear and having a sense of what it's really like. I mean, one of the things, so I mentioned our cohort model, and one of our slides for discussion, and this is the one I tell organizations is the only one that you have to customize, but is to put in your organizational values. Or let's say they have a new, 3-year strategic plan. I'm like, put those in. But talk to me. The question is, what do we do? How are those coming to life? How are they not coming to life? And how does our team actually impact those? What can I do? And so to have those conversations, those are ones that are very rarely had, but those help to ensure not just that you're meeting those values or driving towards those goals, but also help to create that environment where you're more thoughtful about how you give opportunities to people and how you actually get the work done.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you see in your work differences on these dimensions for men versus women?
Good question.
Are they both the same? They both need to be more clear. I don't know. I found that women are a little bit more willing to do it.
I think there's a perception, with both that think that they are doing it. And then the interesting thing is when other people are like, you're definitely not doing it. I mean, it's, as my husband joined in part, one of the things is like, I work, my main contact in most organizations is in HR, and it's one of the few corporate functions that does tend to be more women in that than men. And so a lot of my conversations I have with women, but I'll talk to them sometimes and I'll say, we have this, our team. I'm like, I'm also cognizant there are men that don't want to get their manager training from a woman. And so it's important for me to meet everybody where they are and walk in with that recognition as well. And so again, I have this conversational approach and I try to, but I definitely have found
you get your training from a woman. Jeez Louise.
But you, I do think a common thread is that you think you're being clear, but that's why it's so important that it be a conversation and not just a directive in pretty much anything that you're doing, because it's amazing the things people don't know and then they don't ask you because they don't want to sound dumb or they don't want to be annoying or they think they need to have all the answers themselves. And then it's like the world's worst game of telephone.
Yeah. Stop the telephone, people. Okay. So we're running out of time, but I want to know if because we have a lot of HR, folks that are on this podcast listening. We have a lot of leaders. We have a lot of founders that are listening. If I'm in an organization today, I'm in one of these roles. What do I do? What should I do? What's the most important thing to do outside of being clear? Let's give them another nugget.
Okay, well, there's nothing outside of that. But one thing a question that I think is really helpful for people to ask, no matter your function. I do think it's especially helpful for HR to do it because sometimes in HR, you're starting a few starting blocks back because people have a lot of conceptions and misconceptions or experience with bad HR. And so you do have a bit more to overcome than some other functions have. Again, having been in legal and HR, I'm not winning any popularity contests. But one question I think is really important for HR and leaders to ask, but even colleagues, is asking other people you work with, what are things you wish more people knew about your role or you or what you do? Because frequently when you look at like departments that kind of battle against each other, like maybe sales and legal or sales and information security or IT or all these things, a lot of those come from making these assumptions at people at work. And so giving people the opportunity to say things about my workday or things I'm interested in, really listening to those conversations, you generally end up building relationships with people you may not have had a even personal relationship with or even professional. But you often find that it's better to get work done when you have a sense of it, and it can help you do your own work because you're thinking about the end goal and thinking from the team idea, not just doing the things that are on your plate.
Right. That's so good. I could talk to you all day.
Yeah, I know.
This is so fun.
Wait, I have to ask you first. What's your tip? What do you say? If you had, besides being clear, what would you say to leaders in HR? And I know you've given lots of tips, but what's your, other than that?
Well, it's interesting that you asked, because as you were talking about it, I think that the HR job is the hardest job in the organization. And you kind of hinted at a couple things. There's a bunch of headwinds against it. And so, of course, there's all the things that you mentioned, like maybe they've been in companies and it's bad HR, what have you. But the role is so complicated, and it's gotten even more complicated over the last 10 years, but especially the last 5 years, because, not only are you the HR strategist and the talent strategist, you are the chief medical officer, you're the chief diversity officer, you're the COO in many rights. Now also you get to be the chief AI strategist.
Totally. I was literally just saying,
none of them are prepared to do. And so then the other thing that I think this role has against it that, the other, let's just say C-level roles don't have, is that everybody thinks they can do your job, right? Like nobody questions product the way that they question HR. Nobody questions finance the way that they question HR. Maybe marketing has this aspect a little bit because everybody consumes marketing, but because we're all people, we think we know how to do people. And guess what? Just as Ashley has said on the podcast, none of you know how to have any critical conversations, so you don't,
So we're here to help.
Yes, but to answer your question, is my first advice is to tie what you do to the business, tie what you do to revenue. And instead of talking about things in more qualitative kind of ways, you really need to say, because we did X, Y, and Z, we impacted the P&L in this way. And you can. This, the work that we do literally fuels the company, and it can fuel it in a positive way and it can fuel it in a negative way.
Completely.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I say, which
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I don't know if anybody cares, but that is what I say.
You do.
Well, thank you, Ashley. Okay. So would you mind doing a career confession with me?
No, let's do it.
Okay.
Yes,
All right.
please.
All right. Here's a little context for the question. Career decisions often carry more emotional weight than we expect. They shape how we see ourselves, not just what we do. When you look back at your own career so far, what's one decision that felt uncertain at the time, but ended up changing how you think about work or yourself?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
For me, naturally, it's, this idea of to start my own business. But before that, and a lot of people may work more in corporate, but so in 2016, we had the opportunity to go to Australia for my husband's job. Professionally, it was the worst thing I could have done because I'd moved into the leadership level at Yum Brands that brought a lot of things with it, including opportunities. It was my moving back in my hometown. I had parents, my parents were there. I had 2 small children. And so we had this idea to move across the world, but I immediately said yes. I immediately said, yes, let's happily do it. I'd never been to Australia before we'd moved there, but I thought this just sounds like such an adventure. If I were to look back at what I gave up professionally, the roles I could have had there, or financially, in moving, I moved, I rejoined a prior company. I quoted the salary that I thought would work. They offered me much less than that because I was going to work around the world. We had no idea how it was going to work out.
Right.
I had to, have some odd hours, but for me, it was a gut feeling. Never in my life have I think something said I should say yes to this, despite everything else. But for us, it was this adventure and creating this different opportunity in life. And so, in some ways, I think you can replicate that. Or again, not everybody's going to have the opportunity to go to Australia, but I do recommend it. It really exceeded my very
never
very
been. I want to go so bad.
It was great. We truly exceeded expectations. I could not have enjoyed it more. It changed how I think about work and life and all of those things. And I was still able to keep and build my professional career there, which was great. But sometimes it's not a move to Australia. It's taking on something that scares you at work, or you're like, I'm not qualified for this. Or it's choosing to go on a vacation and not take your work laptop for a couple days and thinking about how you can do that. Literally the things that part of you is like, I'd love to be able to do that. Just saying yes and then backing into that and figuring out what it looks like and doing that with, support and conversation, just like we've talked about this. But sometimes it really is trusting your gut.
Yeah, no, it's so true. When anybody like calls me about like career things, like, should I do this? I'm like, you have to follow your heart. Yeah, there's like all the like logical things. There's the pro and con list but it's like, follow your heart. Your heart will always tell you what to do, right? And that, don't listen to the like negative part of your brain that like is trying to tell you it's scary. Listen to what's going to give you like joy. And sometimes it's scary. A lot of times it is. But that can turn into a beautiful thing, just like Australia.
Agreed. The most beautiful place I've been. Although I will say we kind of laughed because we once had gone down to this beach. I think it was Huskisson Beach. And they advertised themselves as the most beautiful beach in the world. And I was like, you know what? But Destin's really pretty. Destin, so those in Florida. So just know, again, you can find your own adventures anywhere as well.
Anywhere. You don't have to go to Australia.
No.
Ashley, my gosh. By the way, I think the universe brought us together.
Me too.
Because no, Kentucky. By the way, are you Wildcats or Cardinals?
It's so funny. When we were talking about red, I was going to ask that. Then I was like, okay, I don't want to keep hitting the point. So I'm actually both, which is not usual, in part because I don't live, when you don't live in Kentucky, you miss all things.
Yeah.
But I was born in Lexington, but grew up in Louisville. But so I grew up a Cardinals fan, but I went to college at Center in Danville, Kentucky. And so would go to more UK games.
Right.
And fun fact, my brother, who works in corporate strategy and also is part-time in law school, he does some of the pregame of the ESPN affiliate there he does like Moneyball for college basketball, baby, like statistical analysis and like lineups.
Fun.
And so I listened to him for the UK games, chiming in on some. So I like both. What about you?
Well, I am a Cardinals fan. That's my dad went to law school at University of Louisville. Okay. But and mom and dad, if you are listening, I love you, but don't get mad. If we are not in like the final four in NCAA championships and UK is, I will root for U of K because I want somebody from Kentucky to win. Right?
Yeah, it's been a hard few years for Louisville. They're coming back. My mother also went to University of Louisville Law School, but she graduated in her 50s. She went back later in life. But
you mentioned that.
Mentioned that.
That's
and so
crazy.
But she went to U of L, and I took classes at U of L as a high school student. I was right next door, so we got to go over there. And so same again. All things Kentucky, especially when you don't live in the state, you really miss it.
You do. It's a
Commonwealth.
It is a wonderful place to grow up, and it's so beautiful. If you haven't been, go to Kentucky. Okay, thank you so much. This was amazing. You're my new best friend and my long lost sister in red that I have finally found. But if everybody wants to find you, where do they find you? Where do they find the Manager Method?
You can go to managermethod.com, and otherwise you can go on social media. I'm at Manager Method or Ashley Hurd, HERD on LinkedIn. And I do have my book, The Manager Method, coming out with Hay House on February 10th. So
yay! That's so exciting. And watch her TikToks, y'all. She's giving good advice.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ashley.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thanks for listening to Truth Works.